This is a story that's intended mostly for Ellie Wentworth Brown. Yeah. And it's about her father. Because I don't want to pass the scene without telling you, Ellie, about how much I came to admire and love your dad. Yes, your dad. And I want our Croyder Brown children to also learn about their grandfather, who passed this from earth a lot too soon. I'm going to start off with telling them a story that you may not think is directly connected to what my main story is, but it's got to do with when your father found out that I was serious about you, and you were serious about me. And so he decided he had to ask this question of me. He asked me that if I had my druthers, if I could do anything, accomplish anything that I wanted, what would I want to do with my career? And I told him that was an easy one, because if I could do what I really wanted to do, I would be a professional athlete. Well, it staggered him. I could see that answer staggered him, because back then that was not considered a worthwhile career. Really wasn't, and it wasn't, but it was what I wanted to do if I could have. And I could see that I really hurt him, but he quickly recovered, said nothing, and I said, but Mr. Brown, you've got to remember, I don't have the talent for that. There's not the slightest chance that I'm going to be a professional athlete, and you know I'm in the Harvard Business School. The Harvard Business School. I am going to be the best businessman that I can possibly be. Well, he did not say that that was fine. He didn't say anything, but he was never critical of me. He was very uncritical of me before, and he was very uncritical of me after. He never passed any negative judgments on me that I could see. And I always felt that here was a man who was absolutely level-headed. Now, leaving that story, I want to start off with my first impressions of your dad, and I believe I wasn't alone. Your dad was small, and he was kind of a fuddy-duddy. Yes, he was kind of a little fuddy-duddy, and I'll tell you what I mean. Your dad was devoted to his tennis court in Cragsmore, just devoted to it. And he would come out every weekend, every Saturday, every Sunday. First thing he would do all the work on the court. He would brush the court, he would roll the court. Now, rolling the court, that's a big job. Brushing's not, rolling is. Then he would put the lines down. Now, that's huge, because he used lime and in a liquid lime, and so he would put down the lines first with a string, and then he would put down the liquid lime line, and all this would take hours, and he'd have the court all completed and ready by noon, and then he would go in for lunch, and he would take an hour, a nice hour and a half for lunch, and then come out to play. Well, I'm telling you, it happened every time. The Skunks, Earl Hotaling, his good friend Earl Hotaling, and Peter Verucki, they would be watching. And as soon as he completed the court and left, out they came and played. They played on the court. They messed it up. And when your father came out after lunch, there it was all messed up, because Earl Hotaling and Peter Verucki had played on it. Your dad never, he would always shake his head, and he would make some sort of, how could they, but he never got mad. But he allowed this to continue. It continued, and this was kind of why we thought he was a bit of a fuddy-duddy. Your father also he didn't want anybody playing on his court without a shirt on. It just wasn't proper tennis. So Verucki always had his shirt off, and if he saw your dad coming, he put his shirt on. So did the young men who had their shirts off. Because Mr. Brown was a fuddy-duddy and wanted shirts on. I was sympathetic with him on that. I thought he was absolutely right. But that's the kind of way that I must say I started off with your dad, watching that. But then, you know, I worked for 3 or 4 summers in the Cragsmore Inn. And the more I found out about it, the more I realized that your dad was the guy running the inn. Yes, he ran the inn. He hired the guy, and he met with him once a week, and he was responsible for the activities of the inn. And the inn was really, considering that the handicaps it was under, did very well. And your dad was doing it. And then I found out that your dad was the guy, when he was a young man, who had built the country club, the golf course around the inn. Your father, as a young man, said that the Cragsmore Inn ought to have a golf course. And he's the guy that organized and got the golf course built and formed the country club, which surrounded the Cragsmore Inn. And then I found out that when there was a remarkable woman who ran the Cragsmore Inn all through the 30s, and she did an amazing job to keep the Cragsmore Inn going through the 30s and with the Great Depression. But then she died, and the Cragsmore Inn closed. And it was your dad who reopened it. Yes, he's the guy. He bought the inn. He got it for peanuts because you know, the Great Depression had expired it. And your dad is the guy that got the Cragsmore Inn rolling. I mean, when I think about it, it was incredible. And I can come back and later, he didn't get any support from the community, but we can discuss that a little bit later because, well, I'll just simply say that at that time, there weren't any city people who were living in Cragsmore year-round, and it would have taken a sustained effort. Just people coming up in the summer were all they could do was help the library. They just couldn't get into the inn, to helping the inn. But moving along, I then subsequently found out that what Mr. Brown did was Mr. Brown was an entrepreneur. Yes, he had an office on Wall Street, and he said he was a broker, but he did precious little brokering. He was a miner. I found out that Mr. Brown, believe it or not, all those years ago, right after his honeymoon was on, he took his bride, Ruth Brown, Ruth Haskins Brown, he took her out west and they drilled for oil. Yeah, Mr. Brown drilled for oil. And all his life he was trying to hit a jackpot with minerals. And he was into copper, and he was into zinc, and he was into uranium. And here we come to the great story of what's the name of this company? It'll come to me. But he had a uranium mine in the Grand Canyon. In the Grand Canyon of the United States, Ralph Brown had a uranium mine. And of course, the U.S. government was doing everything to shut him down. And they shut him down, and believe it or not, Mr. Brown sued the federal government and won. Yeah, well, we're going to have to continue this, so I'm going to sign off, and we're going to finish up on another disc.